Welcome back to the Online Educator course, Module 2. Today we will continue our overview on climate change and forests and climate communication. We will specifically looking at how climate change will impact forests, and we're learning how to explain climate change in a way that is meaningful to people and forest owners in particular. To develop a curriculum that is more climate change focused, these resources at the end of Chapter 1 in the Educator Guidebook can be helpful. It is helpful to provide examples that people can see. So, where can we see climate change? We can see it most obviously near polar regions. That is where most of the research started on climate. There was evidence in Alaska that there were extreme changes in weather patterns over time, and this was having a large effect on the permafrost and on the forests up there. So, these already have been documented. And the more you get to the poles, the more you can see research-based evidence. Another important factor to keep in mind is that surface waters, like lakes, rivers, and oceans, play a big role in shaping weather. They interact with the atmosphere, influencing patterns that tend to stay relatively constant and consistent, though they can shift over time. This connection between water and air is a key driver of local and regional climate. As surface temperatures are shifting, changes to these local conditions can be seen over time. Mountains also have an influence on weather patterns. They can create areas of shade behind the mountain where rain won't move past. They can also block the movement of species because of the elevation differences and the microclimatic conditions that those create. These are areas where you might see changes in your region. It's important to look at the specific change before working with landowners. How can you pick out ways to talk about climate change that are specific to your region? Climate change in forests can be subtle, but there are ways to spot it, and it's a great opportunity to help clients learn about their land. One key indicator is species migration, especially at the edges of historical ranges. The graph here shows how various species have shifted across the eastern US, often after a major disturbance like fires, storms, or harvesting. These events reset the landscape, and what grows back can be quite different from what was there before. If you notice new species coming in, it's often because older species can no longer compete under the new conditions. Taking people to a site that had a clear cut or burned 10 years ago is a great way to show this in action. What's there now may be a direct result of climate-driven migration. Natural barriers like mountains or water bodies can restrict species movement, leading to range constriction, which raises concerns for biodiversity. That's part of why the eastern US, with the Appalachian Range, has historically been a biodiversity hotspot. As the climate warms, species that thrive in warmer conditions are moving north. Prescribed fire can also influence migration by resetting the landscape in a controlled way, giving new species a chance to establish. But in some cases, invasive species are taking advantage of those changes. So while species migration isn't inherently good or bad, tracking it can be a powerful way to visualize the real underground impacts of climate change. Another fascinating way to talk about climate change is by looking at the trees themselves. Trees hold a record of the climate they have adapted to, and their physiology and morphology reflect that history. One of the most powerful tools we have is tree rings. They can reveal past weather patterns, wet years, droughts, or how those patterns have changed over time. In fact, the last 200 years of tree rings align closely with the rise in fossil fuels used since the Industrial Revolution, making them a clear indicator of climate shifts. We also learn a lot from fossil records, which show where certain tree species used to grow and what their leaves look like. For example, trees with small, smooth-edged leaves tend to come from hot, dry environments, while species with jagged-edged leaves are usually found in wetter areas. As northern climates warm, we may see species returning to places their ancestors once lived. So, leaf shape and tree rings offer a great way to show forest owners that climate change isn't just theory, it's written in the trees. To wrap up, it's more effective to focus on what people can see when talking about climate change and what they can do about it. Global warming is measured by scientists, and while we trust the science, connecting it to forests helps make those changes visible and relatable. Forests are naturally adaptive, and that gives us a hopeful way to frame the conversation, one that sparks curiosity and action, rather than fear. We may want to equip people with the tools to respond, not to worry. If we're working with younger audiences, leaning into the science can help build STEM understanding for future careers. For older landowners, it's more about practical insights and relatable forestry-focused examples. The key is to match your message to your audience, keep it grounded, relevant, and always focus on the forest as a living example of change and resilience. We have a few reflection questions for you from today's video. We encourage you to think about how the forest in your specific region will be affected by climate change because it will be different in different parts of the world. We also encourage you to consider how the landscape features in your region may influence climate change as well. We hope today's conversation was a good introduction of understanding how to engage landowners on climate change topics. If you're watching this video on YouTube, we encourage you to check out our free online educator course. If you're taking the course, here are a few reminders for you. Feel free to put any questions in the Q&A forum on the classroom page. Remember to fill out this survey if you want credits and to complete the comprehension check. Next video, we will dive into understanding the landowner's perspectives in this space. See you next time.